For decades, free trade reigned in the world, until recently.
My administration is committed to defending American companies, and they've been very badly hurt from harmful import surges that threaten the livelihood of their workers, of jobs actually all over this country.
And today we're getting to work to rebuild the backbone of America, manufacturing, unions, the middle class. It's based on a simple premise that will reward work, not wealth in this country. And the key plank of ensuring the future will be made in America.
The message here was clear. Bring jobs back to the U.S. But is it really that simple? Many U.S. manufacturers rely on imported components. Tariffs increase production costs, which by the simple laws of economics reduces competitiveness. The automotive industry contributes 3% to the overall U.S. GDP and is viewed as a critical sector of the United States. The industry relies on global supply chains for affordable and readily available parts. For example, the Ford F-150 is assembled in Michigan and Missouri, but only 45% of its parts are produced in factories in the U.S. or Canada. Several major U.S. automakers have extensive manufacturing operations overseas. High tariffs increase costs and force executives to adjust their investment plans. There were significant losses.
More permanent tariffs would likely have to be paired with more subsidies to keep the companies afloat. And that would prove costly and politically difficult to sustain as the budget deficit will impose pressures to reduce those subsidies. So I think tariffs should be seen as part of an adjustment process, but very time limited, 1, 2, 3 years, with the protection going down over time as required under the international trading rules.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has published multiple reports on the negative impacts of tariffs on U.S. businesses. They found that forcing businesses back to the U.S. could sometimes lead to higher costs due to labor and infrastructure challenges, a primary reason why companies prefer cheaper alternatives overseas. The Council on Foreign Relations has examined the global shift in manufacturing costs and has reported that Vietnam has become a rising key competitor in the manufacturing sector, attracting U.S. businesses for its low labor costs. So again, the tariffs achieved the opposite. Politicians thought they could attract business back home, but they instead created so many obstacles that eventually made manufacturing in the U.S. more difficult, less attractive. Simply put, they failed again.
They're bad for the tech companies. They will slow innovation. Trade is the best thing for innovation because you're trading. and by the way, if you're trading, it has to benefit both sides because the seller wouldn't sell you something at a given price and you wouldn't buy it at a given price if you, the buyer, weren't benefiting, and the seller wouldn't sell it to you if he wasn't benefiting. So contrary to what most people think, trade is not a zero-sum game that just nets out to zero. It's a positive-sum game. The seller gains and the buyer gains. So, and innovation and technology gain.
As Americans look at it, it's a total failure. It didn't work before, and it won't work again. And this is, almost every economist will agree with what I'm about to say. To the extent that it brings back jobs, those goods that are produced in the United States will be produced by robots. That's not going to create the jobs that they want.
The Steel Manufacturers Association and American Automotive Policy Council both warned that steel and aluminum tariffs would increase costs for U.S. manufacturers, potentially leading to job losses in industries that rely on those imports. A report by the Federal Reserve Board concluded that the negative impacts of increased production costs and retaliatory tariffs far outweighed the limited benefits.
The number of jobs is going down in manufacturing, and that's because of productivity. Output per worker is going up with productivity increases. So those are the trends, and the tariffs are not going to budge those trends very much.
Now, U.S. politicians have come up with another argument for tariffs: national security. They argue that, if well targeted, tariffs can meet national security needs.
The national security rationale is pretty murky and has nothing really to do with economics. It's basically the politicians wrapping themselves in the flag and saying that this national security need is so urgent that we need a tariff.
The U.S. has imposed tariffs on steel, which they argue are important commodities for U.S. national defense, as ships, tanks, and aircraft all require the material. Some in Congress have adopted the view that a reliance on cheaper imported steel could be a potential threat to national security. But in reality, only 3% of U.S. steel shipments go to servicing U.S. defense. Also, most imports come from U.S. traditional allies. American politicians seem to have forgotten the harsh lessons of the past. Or perhaps they never learned them in the first place. Free trade unleashes the advantages of each nation, allowing countries to specialize in producing goods and services they can make better and more efficiently, while importing those they produce less efficiently. In contrast, the protectionist tariff policies disrupt this dynamic. The self-inflicted curse does little but delay the benefits of progress and stifle the shared prosperity that free trade fosters.
These tariffs are not a solution. They can be a defensive reaction for a certain sector, for a certain domain, or because there's no fair level playing field. But in the long run, we are all in need of free global trade.
One fact is true: tariffs will raise money for the government, and with more money in the federal coffer, politicians could continue to buy support to promote their tariff schemes that don't work, instead of using better ways like employing free trade to lower costs and bring jobs back to America. But this would be admitting they were wrong all along. Sadly, like many times before, they might not realize it until it's too late.